probably have some legacy families where you've gone through 3 or 4 different students. Older brother, older sister, all the way to the youngest.
Yeah. Yeah. Those are some of the funnest. I become part of the family when it's like that.
Right on. Welcome back to the Peak Show. I'm Seth Peak with Peak Realty and Peak Painting here with Russ Hanush from Acclaimed Tutoring. Happy to have you, Russ.
I'm happy to be here.
Russ is a founder of Physics for Fun, which is now Acclaimed Tutoring out of Templeton, Paso Robles area, serving local students and students remotely. He served for almost 2 decades as America's national laboratories in Livermore, California, working in nuclear physics for the Atomic Vapor Laser Isotope Separation Program. At Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory and in chemical kinetics at Sandia National Laboratory's Combustion Research Facility, where he became a leading expert in supercritical water oxidation reactors. He's also the inventor of the periodic table of dimensions, which we will get into. In 2006, he opened Physics for Fun Tutoring, which is now Acclaimed Tutoring, to help families prepare their students for college by bringing his real-world STEM expertise to teaching. He has helped hundreds of families and students achieve their dreams. Welcome, Russ. I'm super stoked to have you here.
Beautiful. That sounded like quite a mouthful there, Seth.
I'm not a scientist, and I don't say those words very often. So I stumbled through them a little bit, but I'm fully aware of where all that is, and I'm somewhat aware of what that all means. So I think we're okay.
Okay.
So, little background. Russ and I met through a professional networking group. I think we have a mutual friend perhaps online, and they connected us. And so we have a little coffee group on Friday mornings, and business owners and middle managers, salespeople, and just a great group of folks to get together every Friday morning. So it's been great to get to know you, Russ.
Yes, it's been great getting to know you and the group.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to bring you on here to learn, first and foremost, kind of your background before getting you into tutoring when you moved up here to Paso Robles, or down here rather, from the Bay Area. So give us a little background, a little snippet of your life, how you got into science, and what really drives like your interest in that subject.
Okay. So I grew up in the Bay Area, Campbell, California. Mm-hmm. And there were a couple episodes in my childhood that just really turned me on to science. Mm-hmm. When I was 8 years old, one of my parents' friends took me up to their private observatory in the Santa Cruz Mountains and showed me Saturn in his telescope. And just seeing those rings around Saturn was just it was just amazing to me. It's like, oh my God, there's stuff like that really out there. It's not just a picture in a book. Mm-hmm. And so that really drove my excitement about science. And then when I was in junior high, I was put into a program called MGM, which we always claimed stood for monkeys, goof-offs, and morons. California called it something, gifted minors or something like that. But we were the troublemakers.
Yeah.
And so they would take us out of class and take us on field trips because we'd be done with our homework, and everybody else would be sitting there doing their homework, and we'd be pulling the girls' pigtails, whatever. So they would take us on these field trips, and they took us to the Exploratorium one time when I was about 14. And the Exploratorium is this amazing place filled with hands-on science experiments. It's incredible if you haven't been there. And I as we were leaving, I went through the gift shop. Uh-huh. And I discovered this book called Einstein's Universe by Nigel Calder. Mm-hmm. And in it, he explained general relativity in layman's terms. And I discovered that gravity slows time down. Mm-hmm. So time actually runs faster in outer space than it does on the surface of the Earth. We have to actually account for that in the GPS satellites. And so that really intrigued me because I've always had this interest in time travel.
Right.
And so that set me off on a journey of just studying science and time and space and that kind of stuff, which led to the invention of the periodic table up here behind me, which, as you said, we'll talk about later. So I had this intense interest in science. And so after high school, I had a job as a journeyman machinist, and I put myself through college. When I graduated from college, my first job was a job at Lawrence Livermore. I did not know I was applying for a job at Lawrence Livermore, but it was a goal of mine to work there. And I applied at this contractor company, and they hired me and said, "Well, do you mind working in Livermore?" And I discovered they were giving me a job at Lawrence Livermore, and that was like one of the best days of my life.
At the time, it was. I mean, it's probably always been since since the Cold War. It's been a pretty bustling facility, right?
Yes, yeah. We were extremely busy right up until we won the Cold War, and then they shut down the program. I was the Avalis program. They shut that program down because we didn't need that was for enriching uranium.
Right.
So we didn't need piles of uranium like that anymore. So we shut that program down. That was when I started working on the supercritical water oxidation.
I just put two and two together. Sorry, I went on a tangent with it. Back to the Future. They're trying to get their uranium in the late '80s, and from the Libyans for the time machine.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's where my brain goes. I'm thinking about like pop culture movies and the uranium and the Libyans.
Yeah. But it's exactly what we were trying to beat the Libyans and the Iranians and all that at purifying the uranium. So yeah.
Cool. Hey, so when you were at Lawrence Livermore, what was like the coolest thing that you ever saw or you came across that maybe you can't talk about it? Maybe it's like a NDA or code. I don't know. Maybe it's covert or something. But is there anything cool you could share with us that was just blew your mind that you saw there?
Yes, yeah. So I did have a top secret security clearance, and there are things that I'd have to kill you if I told you.
Don't do that.
One of the coolest things was when we were building copper vapor lasers. So we were actually developing these lasers on a large scale, beams about 4 or 5 inches around.
Wow.
And about 4,000 watts per beam. And we would take a chain of these lasers. It was a chain of 4 lasers, 3 amplifiers, and one what they called an oscillator. That was kind of the thing that got it started. And we'd pump those lasers, get 4,000 watts out of one chain of lasers, and then we had 48 chains of these lasers. So we could put 4,000 watts times 48 into these lasers, and then we would pump what's called a dye laser, so it would make other colors. And we had to tune these colors extremely specifically, and the exact numbers are one of those things that's protected. So one time we were working on these lasers, and we had to actually pump all this power into one place, and it was just seeing that power. It was just that much power in one little location. We could focus that down, and if you stuck a physical wrench into it, like a box end wrench for working on cars, it would literally hum because the light was so powerful. It was pushing on the wrench. It was just incredible.
So is that like when you see in the movies, like back to the movies, when you see like a laser like destroying something, like getting shot from a spaceship, it's like, is that like something that's even possible?
That is possible. It's not within our technological abilities yet.
Okay, that's good.
But definitely, yeah, we can do it at short ranges, and we shoot lasers long ranges. So now all we got to do is get that power density and the long range.
Gotcha. Yeah. Let's
there are
sleep
actually
a little bit better at night.
Good. Yeah, there are actually people who bounce lasers off the moon. There are retroreflectors left behind on the moon from the Apollo missions, and if you shoot one of those with a laser, the way the mirror is designed, the laser has to come back exactly along the same path it came in at. And so people are literally bouncing lasers off the moon and measuring signals coming back to Earth. Wow. So yeah, we can shoot lasers along the way. Yeah.
What was the purpose of this isotope laser? Was it atomic vapor laser? What, like this program you're talking about? What was the purpose of it? Is it for like communication? Is it for?
Oh no. This was for purifying nuclear materials.
Gotcha.
So um, the way we do it now is we take uranium and we treat it with fluorine, and then it turns into a gas.
Mm.
We spin that gas around in something called a centrifuge, and the heavier elements fall out to the outside, and the lighter elements will stay inside. So it can separate these things. And what we're separating are very specific isotopes of one material. So an isotope is an atom that has one atom has a little bit more mass than another.
Mm.
So there's this tiny little difference between the two. And we were trying to get very specific ones. So what you do is you spin them around in the centrifuge, you collect the heavier stuff, and then you spin the lighter stuff around more and you collect the heavier stuff. You keep spinning that around. Pretty soon, all you have is the lightest stuff left. That's the stuff we were trying to collect. And it takes thousands and thousands of these centrifuges spinning all the time just to keep up with the demand for the materials for like our nuclear power plants and such.
But you can't necessarily
So
see the
we,
end product.
actually, you can. It is called yellow cake.
Oh,
You've
that's
probably
okay.
heard of this. Iran, yeah, yeah. It's called yellow cake. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Not the kind of cake I want for my birthday.
No, I'm just saying. There was man. I'm the worst. There's a skit on the Chappelle show, and they're talking about don't touch the yellow cake, and but anyway,
Yeah.
it's gonna be hard to talk to me, Russ, because everything smart you tell me, I'm just gonna equate it to like a comedy show or like something like that. But I am keeping up. I just
That's good.
my brain goes there. So now that I understand what yellow cake means, I knew it had something to do with nuclear stuff, but
Materials. Yeah.
yeah.
So then what we were doing, we were actually vaporizing the uranium, turning the uranium itself into a pure gas, and then shooting lasers through it, and the lasers would electrically charge very specific atoms of the uranium, and then we could turn on a magnet and it would collect them. And so that was the whole process we were developing.
Oh, that's really neat. I mean, that kind of stuff is it's totally necessary, and it's really above a lot of people's heads in terms of like trying to understand it. But it's definitely fascinating for sure. And it kind of at what point during working there? I know you worked there for a while. Did you start to come up with your periodic table of dimensions? And I would say in as much layman's as you can describe it, because I've looked into it. I've been looking at it for the past like 20 minutes, checking it out, and last week, and I want to hear it from you. What was it all about, and why did you develop it?
In chemistry, we have the periodic table of elements.
Right.
And what that does is it arranges all the chemical elements in order of their atomic number or the number of protons in their nucleus.
Mm-hmm.
So I was doing my studying on time and space, and I started noticing patterns among the measurements that we were taking. So I noticed that there was a progression from how far did I move to how fast was I moving to how fast was I accelerating, et cetera, et cetera. There were there were trends that went from energy to power, force, energy, power, and so I started noticing like connections among these dimensions. So I did a very, very thorough survey of a couple hundred reference books, and I recorded every single measurement that I could, and made sure that I found sources that detailed their components of mass, space, and time. Turns out we also need to account for electric charge. So if I have those four things, I can describe anything in the universe with just mass, space, time, and electric charge. So I then started putting these things in order. And it turns out that number is dimensionless. So that goes at the origin of our system. And it's like when you were graphing XY tables in
Right.
algebra and you had to y equals mx plus b. It's stuff like that, only it has four axes. So we don't only have X and Y, we also have Z, and now let's call the fourth one W. So we've got four different ways of tracking this information. And as we put those together, they each make a new measurement. And so if I put distance divided by time, I get speed. And if I do distance divided by time squared, or distance divided by time, I get acceleration, which is like when you're taking off from a stoplight. And so I showed that these things are all tied together and that this is a closed system. I've accounted for every possible measurement that there is in science, and they're all ordered according to their dimensionality. So the table itself is really helpful for understanding dimensions. As we get into dimensional analysis, it can become very important. It helps us determine what possible measurements can we make if we're only given certain starting points.
So I've kind of put it up here on the screen and figured out how to put it up here on the screen. And
Yeah.
and what's the best use? Who do you feel like would most benefit from using this?
This is a teaching tool.
Okay.
So this is something that's used when we're teaching physics. It helps students understand the big picture. These are all the measurements you're ever going to have to deal with. Now, let's take a look at this one particular measurement. Let's take a look at displacement, which is the same as measuring a distance. And then let's see, how does that relate to speed? And how does speed relate to acceleration? So change in position is called displacement. Change in displacement is called velocity. Change in velocity is called acceleration. Change in acceleration is called jerk. Change in jerk is called snap. Change in snap is called crackle, and change in crackle is called pop. So we've got snap, crackle, and pop in there, which is always kind of entertaining to students. But then we can see how those measurements are all related. And they're all related by the exact same thing, by an integration. And the integration part is a little bit over for most people's heads until they get into like college science.
Yeah.
But the way we use it at the younger ages is as a means for developing a curriculum. We start, one of the first things that we want to learn is numbers. We learn how to count right away. That's before we even get into kindergarten. And that's the origin of this table, the center of the table, 0, 0, 0, 0. Now, later on, we learn like how far things are. Oh, my house is so big, but if I'm going down the street to my church, it's a long ways. And so we start figuring out about distance. And then we learn about time, and we learn how to tell time. And then we might learn about how fast things go and speed. And then because we're going really fast, we might learn about inertia and how hard it is to stop. And so we can find these connections and use these connections as a means of tying a curriculum together for students.
So this kind of leads perfectly into, what you now do. And you moved here to Paso Robles to leave your career up in the Bay Area. And at what point did you start teaching students science and math? Because your focus is just the STEM, right? Just STEM for your tutoring company?
Yes.
We're
very
what was
STEM focused.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're STEM focused. We usually work with students from about 8th grade all the way through college. I've had a couple PhD candidates that I was working with even. So we go all the way through university. What was the question again, Seth?
Well, the question was sort of the lead-in question was, you could develop the periodic table of dimensions in 1997, but you started your business in 2006. So there was an overlap of, you created this in order that is used primarily for educating people and creating pathways between understanding. But the actual creation of your tutoring and company officially was in 2006. Were you teaching, educating, mentoring anybody in between, and how did the tutoring company come about?
Yeah. So what happened there was in 2002, I was working at Sandia National Labs at that time, and they were trying to downsize. So they offered an early retirement incentive to all the employees. And I took them up on it since I had just invented this periodic table of dimensions. I'd been there for almost 20 years. And so I figured, okay, it's time to move on.
Yeah.
I took them up on that and I moved to Paso Robles. When I got here, I took a 3-year sabbatical and developed my periodic table of dimensions to the level it's at now. From then, once I had that developed, then I started looking around and I'm okay. That was my main purpose in life. I've accomplished that. Now what? And a cousin of mine asked me to tutor her homeschooled kids. So I helped them out and had such great success with that that I bought a set of radio ads on the local radio station KPRL
Yeah.
and played those for a couple months and managed to pick up a couple really nice clients, including Justin from Justin Wines. And I got to tutor Justin's family. Um, and and it just kind of took off from there. So 17 years later, I'm looking back at it and going, wow, I've been tutoring for all this time. And it's just amazing. The people I've helped, the families I've helped, the love the community has just shown to me. I went through a situation back in 2018 where I was diagnosed with a brain tumor, and my clients they just came together and supported me so much. I can't express how much love I have for my clients.
Yeah, you probably have some legacy families where you've gone through 3 or 4 different students. Older brother, older sister, all the way to the youngest.
Yeah. Yeah. Those are some of the funnest. I become part of the family when it's like that. I used to actually drive to people's homes and they would feed me dinner when I was tutoring and such. And you develop really, really tight bonds when you do that. At this point, I no longer have the time to drive from place to place. I want to serve more people, so I have them come to my place. But I miss those days. I miss those bonds that were getting built when I was just there, and they would invite me to dinner after my tutoring session. Yeah, those were good days.
Do you? I know that you also have other tutors that work for you remotely. Are they? Do you all specialize in different parts, different subjects? Maybe geometry here, algebra here, pre-calc here, or does everybody tutor the same subjects no matter what?
So most of my tutors are perfectly fine with the lower level math. So pretty much everybody will tutor Algebra 1 and geometry. By the time you get to Algebra 2, some of the people who are specialists in life sciences and stuff, they're not that interested in tutoring those.
Right.
But I will hire a tutor specifically because she is good at chemistry or she is good at biology. But then I ask them to also try to be more generalized and tutor other subjects as well. Otherwise, they only get 1 or 2 students sometimes.
Right.
So to keep everybody busy, I try and keep them fresh with their math. I try to keep them fresh with their sciences.
Do you feel that students that are coming to Acclaimed Tutoring for science or math, is there one subject that succeeds more than others in terms of remote tutoring? Like, say, for instance, a student, like the success rate of a student going for an AP test or the SATs, if they're focusing on science versus math, does one outperform the other in terms of tutoring?
I get more requests for math tutoring. So that there's a lot more demand for math tutoring than there is for the science tutoring. The SAT and ACT tests, they really don't have much in the way of math or science testing. The ACT has a science section, which is really just more of another reading section with technical terminology. So most of the science classes in high school level, at least, are so focused on the basics that the teachers they're avoiding the math part.
Right.
And so there's not as much demand for that. Over my years tutoring, I've watched some of these chemistry courses go from teaching a full blown chemistry course that includes things like what moles are and how to calculate moles and how to calculate chemical reactions. And now they only get as far as what is a mole in an entire year. So, yeah, so I've watched these teachers over the years. Oh, well, my students have a hard time getting that concept, so I'm just not going to teach it.
Yeah.
So these classes are really, really dumbed down. And when
Well,
the kids are getting to college, that is not doing them a service.
well, to give you some perspective too is well, I'm a liberal. I have a liberal arts degree, history research. Wrote a lot of papers in college. To give you an idea, at San Diego State in the early 2000s, I had to have one math credit, so one semester of a math course for my degree, and they allowed basic, QBasic, or what was the thing? What was the other programming? JavaScript. You could take a computer programming class instead of math at the university if you were a liberal arts major. So I didn't even have any math after high. In fact, I didn't have any math after 10th or 11th grade because I did through geometry, and then I took AP statistics, which is obviously math, but it wasn't a requirement beyond a certain realm. But it's interesting. It's interesting to think back on it because I know some of my friends' kids and my sister and my younger sister, they had a lot more math and science. I didn't even take chemistry in high school. I took biology and then I took physics. They let you pick chemistry or physics. So it's just interesting because I was just gonna say that it's interesting because I don't have any frame of reference for certain things that people talk about. Like when you're talking about chemistry, beyond what my own interest of Googling something to find out what something is, I never learned it.
Yeah, yeah. And this is actually something that I try to teach my students. It's like they're asking, well, what am I going to use this for?
Yeah,
And it's like, well, one of the big things is context later on in life.
yeah,
So you can have a conversation with people. Yeah.
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 Well, it's also very practically. You have household chemicals in your home. You're dealing with things in life. It's chemistry is not a. It's not a. I mean, it's used for every product that we have, every piece of plastic that we have. Everything's made with chemistry, and it's everywhere. It's just a matter of understanding the world you live in. It can be difficult if you've never had any framework, no foundation.
Uh, yeah.
Do you have any adults that come to you that just are interested in learning and getting better at a subject, like a math subject, just for pure personal development, or is it all pretty much students, college, junior high, college, and high school?
I have the occasional adult, but it's not simply for personal enrichment. Usually, what's happened is they have decided to go back to college,
Right.
or they are doing some sort of professional certification.
Mm-hmm.
So one person came to me and they wanted to go back to college and get their master's,
Mm-hmm.
and so I was helping them with the GRE test. Um, Another person had oh, fibromyalgia,
Mm-hmm.
and he could barely move, and he just needed to get out of the house and get back into socializing and stuff like that. And so his caretaker actually set him up with me just as a means of socializing him in something he needed to know about.
Right.
So we had it was a social arrangement as well as me trying to teach him the math.
Do you for your students, are they signed up for a hour to hour? Do you do contracts or you do school like, hey, for a semester it's going to cost this much and you get this many meetings per month, or do you just say it's just monthly, class by class or hour by hour? How do you work that? Russ, did we cut out? Is there a delay?
Okay, so you're breaking up really bad there, so I'm not sure I got all of that.
All right, we're back. We got a bad connection there. My question was, if someone was to sign up for Acclaimed Tutoring, do they have to sign like a contract for like a semester, or is it just hour by hour, set up a time, almost like a piano lesson where you're just you're booking an hour ahead of time and then you commit to it and there's like a cancellation fee, or do you do contracts for like semesters and school years?
We do not do contracts at all. So what we do is I encourage a once a week appointment, an hour a week. Some students will actually sign up for 2 appointments in a week. And occasionally I'll have somebody who will sign up for 2 hours at a shot. I find that optimally an hour and a half is really the best amount of time for an appointment. At 2 hours, you start burning people out, and at 1 hour, there's still stuff to cover.
Sure.
But most people are happy at 1 hour a week, and that's what they can handle. So we work with that. We charge by the month in advance to book the appointments, but the money's always yours. If you don't use the appointments, we're more than happy to refund it or just keep it as a credit for when you come back for more tutoring. In general, most families, once they sign up, they'll stay with us for at least a semester. College students tend to be very specifically 1 quarter or 1 semester. They're done with the class. They figure they're done with the tutoring.
Right.
High school students, however, we tend to get them, once they sign up and they see the benefits that we provide, they tend to keep coming back through their entire high school career.
That's
so
good.
I'll be with a family for 5-6 years. If I start with them in 8th grade, 5 years in the school system, in the public school system, and then maybe a couple more years in college. And so I've worked with some students for 7-8 years.
Wow. Yeah, definite benefit. Are you are you currently taking on more students right now? I mean, you have capacity for?
We are.
Yeah.
We are moving into summer. And summer is our slow time, so we practice. We have SAT, ACT sessions. We do accelerated math for students who want to get ahead and just learn math for the fun of math. And we also tutor for summer courses at Quest and summer school students.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate all the info, and it's always fascinating for me to talk about subjects I know very little about, because I'm just a very inquisitive person, and I try my best to wrap my head around it. But in terms of like the tutoring, if someone was going to sign up or want to explore the idea, it would be acclaimedtutoring.com is the best way to get a hold of you on your contact page.
That is, yes, www.acclaimedtutoring.com, or they can also call or text me, 805-610-1725.
I will put your info in the video description as well. So if you're watching and you want to grab that and you didn't have a pen handy, go ahead and click the description below and you'll see all of Russ's info. One last question, Russ. You still barefoot water ski?
I do. I love it.
Yeah. I saw that
turns
picture.
out that was what caused that brain tumor I got diagnosed with.
That was before?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Gotcha.
I took a fall one time barefoot water skiing. It perforated my eardrum because my ear in the water cupped. And the debris that got left behind is what turned into that tumor.
Wow.
That I had to have removed. So yeah. 25 years. It took 25 years for that thing to grow.
Really? And they could key it back to exactly where it came from? I mean, like from like debris going in your ear?
Yeah, there are only a couple things. There are only a couple things that cause cholesteatomas, which is what that was. And one is repeated ear infections as a child. I had none of that. And one was perforated eardrums. And so we were able to trace it back to that incident where I perforated my eardrum.
Wow. Very cool, Russ. Well, I would look forward to seeing you. I'll probably see you. We're recording this Thursday, so I might see you tomorrow morning, huh?
Sounds good. I will be there.
Thanks for coming on and talking about Acclaimed Tutoring, your background, and just really had a good time getting a little bit deeper to know you, man.
Sure thing.
I'll talk to you later.
Having me.